back here, and I'll reap your harvest. That's just the way people are. It's like the old saying, you know, you go to jail. My mom told me, you go to jail too long, people are going to forget you. And if you stay too long, they're going to forget you. And in the case of Dr. King last days, he was suffering because he took a position against the Vietnam War. You know, being a black man, you out of hand now.
Yeah.
You stepping out here. You shouldn't have nothing to do. You have no say. Then he decided to look at the economic situation, the economic plight around the country. He goes down to Mississippi. He goes into these neighborhoods. Kids are poor. They're poor. They don't even they're not even getting a meal a day. They go for days, their stomach all pumped out.
Mm-hmm.
This is in America. He goes visit where people don't even have floors in their houses. It's only ground.
Mm-hmm.
So he makes that sacrifice because he's doing his deed just like Jesus. He's worried about the have-nots, the disenfranchised.
Amen. Amen.
So how I'm relating this is that when he was living, even with people that were of African descent, who were black or whatever they call us back then,
Yeah.
they call us colored because our mixture. I was telling my wife, practically every generation, the last 4 generations in America, they're all mixed, not by choice.
Right. Right.
The women were raped. They went over out in the field, and the master or the boss would grab one of them and ride off in the truck and then drop them back off. 9 months later, you see a child with light skin, light colored skin. Indirectly, we would call that today rape, but back then it was their variety of choice. And if you open your mouth, you might end up lynched. So nobody said anything. Could you imagine 400 years people doing a race of people that way? We're all gonna be mixed.
That's right.
But we wasn't selectively being mixed, but we still loved our children, even though one came up in the family and didn't look like nothing like any of the other children in the family. But you were treated accordingly. Even the father, the parent would accept the child, knowingly that his wife had been tampered with. So what we are today is we back to where we never left, because we never confronted the issue. We never confronted the issue of being who we are, because it wasn't important to the oppressor. Your history wasn't important to them. Only their history was important. Your only benefit you offered them was labor.
That's right.
Pick that cotton. And then once they work you and use you up, and they die and put you in the hills somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't have a funeral home out in the woods. Been many bodies you ride down through the countries. People just buried in 6 feet holes.
Right. Right.
Nobody had markers on the graves.
Yeah.
So we got to be in touch with the reality. It's so easily to ignore our plight. And what I mean by plight is where we come, how we traveled. So we always had to rely on God.
That's right.
We still have to rely on God today.
Yes.
We don't think that you arrived. These are issues that you have to confront. And there's many of us who come up in cultures in our community, even of African descent or whatever community you came from. It was not something you talked about because it wasn't important, because you had been indoctrinated. And what I mean by indoctrinated is you've been trained to think a certain way, to behave a certain way, and to act a certain way. So you don't know your condition. Because over 400 years of being trained or being disciplined in a certain fashion, a certain way, you find yourself just acting out that way. So you become uncomfortable when someone discussed the issue. When Dr. King came around, some of these different towns, they say, hey, we don't want you here.
Yeah.
They was content to be the way they were.
Not a mercy.
Okay, this is a message. This is the kind of message that Dr. King used to give.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? He used to walk in and inform people because the Spirit of God gave it to him. You know,
Let my people go.
I had a point here
Let
when
my
I'm
people
starting off.
go.
What happened the other day is what God taught us in the Bible. It says, I was hungry, and you gave me food. I was thirsty, and you gave me drink. I was a stranger, and you welcomed me. That's what happened down in South Carolina the other day. They followed the scripture, even though it was a stranger. You know, you welcome. So you're sitting in the church right beside the pastor. He's there so joyful to be there, to be your shepherd, to be your host. But you came in with hate in your heart. You came in saying that you were a victim because other people are rising, because other things are changing, because they are rising and you saw them staying down where you could keep your foot on top of them like a footstool. So you angry. You don't blame them. You say they're taking over something. You say the people coming to take over the country. What country that belongs to you? And who's taking over what? Because you have to be in control? Because you're the one who has to be the president? Because you're the one who have to dictate the rules that others, that God choose to be in control? That they take something from you? So you're saying that you are a victim. You're saying that they're taking your women. You're saying that I must carry out these murders because of those reasons, that you feeling victimized. Well, what about all the slave women that came that didn't want to be with you, but you chose to force yourself upon them? What about them? Today the women are not, whatever color they are, not saying that others are forcing themselves on them. They're making a choice on who they want to be in love with, or who they love.
Amen.
But in your eyes, it has to be you that is in control. So if you don't have control, you're saying someone is taking something, so you want to go out and kill them? You want to go out and destroy them?
Crazy.
Okay?
Crazy.
So this is where your teaching comes.
Crazy.
As I start off with this sermon, and I just read the last 3 or 4 days, you can see I'm not reading now, but I read a lot of information, and it made a lot of sense. The Spirit of God gave it to me.
Amen.
So we have an element in our society who's quietly, because this president is black, so they went out and they bought more guns than any time in history. Let's deal with the real truth.